Welcome back to this special Good to Know Consumer Health edition of The Real Deal. I'm Jeanette Pavini. Now, many of us believe that the most expensive health care is the best health care. In the next few minutes, you'll see why when it comes to health care, price does not always equal value.
I really wasn't asking them what their fees were. I was asking friends and looking for what type of service they provided, how responsive they were, how thorough they were, their reputation.
Cynthia chooses her doctors based on how she feels about them, not on cost. And research shows that's not a bad strategy.
There is no relationship necessarily between quality and cost. And so the kind of consumer decision rule that works in most other industries, if I want a nicer car, I have to pay more, doesn't apply in healthcare.
How do you choose?
I primarily use the internet. I just read reviews that had already been posted, and I was looking for doctors that were known for spending time with their patients.
It's very important for consumers to get every available scrap of quality information when they're picking a treatment option.
You can find online tools that take your specific health needs into account. This one allows you to compare over 160 procedures and data related to hospital safety, patient satisfaction, and cost. It's compiled by third-party sources. Cynthia's family is healthy, so her research focuses mostly on the quality of doctors who are close by.
When I call, the doctor usually calls me back within a few hours. When Malia was born, they actually made a house call, which I thought was wonderful.
Making decisions about the best hospital or doctor for you can be complicated. Using an interactive online tool that takes the variables of your situation into account takes some of the guesswork out of the process. Now, we all know that staying healthy is an inside job. While doctors can help us when we're sick, good health takes personal responsibility. And joining us today is Dr. David Ormerod, Medical Director of Blue Shield of California. Dr. Ormerod is going to help us understand just how important it is to be a good collaborator when it comes to health care. So welcome. Thank you for coming here today and sharing your wealth of information.
Thank you. Very nice to be here.
Now, we all hear about wellness. How can patients really, do their best at staying healthy? What is the best shot?
Yeah. Well, there's certainly two important things that patients can do. The first of all is getting the appropriate prevention studies done. As adults and parents, we're often really good about getting our kids to the pediatrician and getting the immunizations, but as adults, oftentimes we fall short. So getting the screening tests done, like mammograms and pap smears for women, cholesterol checks and blood tests for blood sugar to diagnose diabetes. They're simple tests, and yet they can make a wealth of difference for your long-term health.
Okay, so really knowledge is power in this case.
Knowledge definitely is power.
And by having, this information, it can prevent things from getting to a worst case scenario.
Earlier diagnosis leads to earlier treatment to better outcomes.
Okay, and then if you had a dream patient, what would a doctor's dream patient be? How can we prepare to be that patient when we come in to see our doctors?
There's several keys to being a good consumer of health care. The first of all is taking ownership. Your health is important to you because obviously you have to live with the outcomes of that health. So by taking ownership and being responsible, that means understanding your condition, understanding what your risks are, knowing what you can do to prevent those risks. The second thing is to be prepared. So investigating different options about your doctor, investigating about diseases and conditions, making a list when you're going to see a doctor. The third thing is to be honest with your doctor. Your doctor's decisions and recommendations are going to be based on what you tell him or her. And if you're not telling the complete truth, if you're omitting important symptoms, or conversely, if you're exaggerating symptoms, your doctor's decisions are going to be based on what you're telling them. And the last thing is follow-up. Making sure that if you've committed to do something, follow up with an appointment or making some lifestyle changes, that you actually do that so the next time you see your doctor, you're prepared to discuss that.
Because it's interesting you mentioned follow-up. I don't think a lot of people, probably myself included at times, once you feel better, if you have a follow-up appointment, you might not go. And that's not the right way to go, huh?
No, absolutely not.
Because what could happen if you don't do your follow-up? You could get set back and be worse? Or?
Absolutely. Well, for example, you might take a medication and begin to feel better immediately, and you think, oh, great. I'm already feeling better, I don't need to go back to the doctor. But you might be having other symptoms, symptoms may come up. that you weren't aware of that are going to be important to the overall picture.
And I think it's interesting that you mentioned about people over-exaggerating a little bit, because I think people do that because they think, oh, I want him to take me seriously and I want to get in for an appointment, and that's not good either, because they're going based on that information, correct?
Absolutely. Your doctor has to make decisions and recommendations based on what you're telling him or her. And if they're making incomplete, if they have incomplete information, the recommendations may be actually opposite of what needs to happen.
That's very interesting. And then if someone is diagnosed with a very serious illness, what is the best way for them to be productive in their, health and getting better?
Again, it gets back to ownership. So if you have a condition, first of all, you want to understand what that condition is. So make sure it's very clear with your doctor what condition it is. Ask questions. If you're an older person who's having memory problems, it might help to have a younger family member there so that they can remember things and write things down, so when you get home, you remember and you have documentation of what the doctor told you. Do some research. There's the internet, books, library, there's a wealth of information about conditions and diseases. So if you're diagnosed with a condition, do the research and understand that condition as well. That'll make you a better partner with your doctor in taking care of that condition.
What should people keep in mind when they are taking medications? Because, there's a lot of things you hear about interacting, the interaction of drugs. And so what's the best advice for medication?
Well, here's an interesting statistic. About 25% of prescriptions that doctors write are never even filled at the pharmacy. And we have no way of knowing that. When we write a prescription, we don't necessarily know that the prescription is filled. Why that happens, people maybe don't like the medication, maybe they hear about it or they read about it, they say, oh, I don't want to take that medication because it has side effects. They don't go back to their doctor and say, I didn't get that medication filled. They just don't tell the doctor. Or they're feeling better by the next day, and so they don't go back and take it. So the first thing is fill the prescription. If you don't, make sure your doctor knows that you didn't fill it. Okay. The second thing is to make sure you're taking the medication as prescribed. So understand from your pharmacist, who can be a great resource, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, take it with meals, take it on an empty stomach. Some medications can be very specific about how they're taken. And the last thing is persistence. It's amazing, about half of all medications, people that should be taken regularly, within 6 months, they're missing doses regularly or they've stopped it altogether. So taking those medications regularly will make a difference.
And I think one other thing is letting doctors know any supplements, anything that you're taking that's herbal, just to let them know everything that you're on when they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Vitamins and mineral supplements can impact medication. The doctor needs to know. And another thing is that if you're seeing multiple doctors, it's important that each doctor know what medications you're taking.
And it's a team.
It absolutely is a team. And you're probably the most important part of the team.
Absolutely. We have to take responsibility,
Absolutely.
of our own health. Thank you. So I could talk to you for hours about this, but we're out of time now. But I thank you very much for all this good advice.
As always, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. And for more information on being a smart health consumer, go to blueshieldca.com/good-to-know. And still ahead on this special Good to Know Consumer Health edition of The Real Deal, they're healthy and delicious. We've got the latest on how superfoods can help you feel better.
I think eating lighter and healthier definitely affects my mind and alertness.
Many of us suffer from back pain. Some advice that really may help you out.
You have no idea when it's going to hit. That's the problem with it.
It's all ahead in this consumer health edition of The Real Deal.